panels are a fascinating technology. I think we can all agree upon the idea that we take the energy from the sun and power our homes with it. But what is the practicality of it, and what does it look like to buy or sell a home with solar panels involved? Hi, I'm Charlie Peterson. I'm a real estate agent in the North Orlando area with Keller Williams Heritage Realty. If you could just take a second to subscribe to this channel so you can get more great content like this and more news about our local market. Also, if you find value in this content, please share it with a friend who may be considering buying solar panels or buying a house that has solar panels. This is great content to know of before you do so. So stay tuned. We're going to jump right into the 5 categories that I've come up with. Today, I've put together 5 different categories and 5 different key things that you should be asking when it comes to buying or selling a home that has solar panels. On top of that, I've put together 3 actual stories from my personal involvement in real estate transactions that'll give you a wide array of knowledge of what it actually looks like to buy or sell a home with solar panels. So stay tuned. So the first and typically the most common type of financing situation that the homeowner is in is that they have financed these solar panels with a loan. And typically this loan is a fixed interest rate over a course period of time of anywhere from 10 to 30 years in most cases. Most common that I've come across is right around 30-year total loan payment on those. So one major thing that you keep in mind with these finance panels is, what does the federal tax credit situation look like for that current homeowner? A federal tax credit is in the amount of 30% in this current time period, 30% of the total financed amount or total cost of the solar panels. So example, solar panels were $10,000. The homeowner gets a federal tax credit of $3,000. The most common situation is a solar panel company will incentivize a homeowner for the first 18 months at a lower payment, in agreement that the homeowner will give the solar panel company that federal tax credit. If the homeowner does not give that federal tax credit back to the solar panel company, then the fixed payment for the remainder of the loan goes up a certain amount. So example, for the first 18 months, it's $150 as long as you give the tax credit to the solar panel company. And then, but if you don't, then after 18 months, the payment's gonna go up to $200. So first 18 months at $150, the remainder of it at $200. Disclose this to the buyers, and buyers, make sure you ask what situation that is in for the solar panels. A comment I've come across about 25 years. What this is that you don't own the panels yourself. The solar panel company owns the panels, but they're fixing the panels to your roof, and you're paying a set amount that is going to increase each year. So let's say, for example, it's $150 for the first year. The next year and every year thereafter, it's going to increase at a agreed upon amount between you and the solar panel company. Typically anywhere from 2 to 4% each year. I've had several situations where about 2.9%. As a buyer, you want to make sure, how long has this lease been going on? As a seller, typically you cannot pay this lease off within the first 5 years of going into contract with this lease agreement. This is a huge scenario if you're going to go resell the home within the 5 years. If you can't find a buyer willing to take on this lease, you can't even pay that lease off within the first 5 years. I know, sounds a little complicated, but leasing typically is going to be the most complicated scenario in order to find a qualified buyer who is willing to assume that lease. The third situation that you're going to find, the homeowner paid cash for the solar panels and is not trying to transfer or assign any kind of loan or lease over to the buyer. Typically, this is the best scenario for both parties because, one, it's much easier to find a buyer who is willing to buy the house with solar panels as the seller, so great benefit for you. 2, as the buyer, you're not assuming any kind of loan or taking on any kind of additional payments on top of your mortgage. Much easier transaction this way because of the lack of uncertainty on who can qualify to assume that loan or the lease on top of the mortgage payment. Here's the 4th way, and I have not come across this situation personally myself, but I know that they do exist. This is going to be the least common, and that is the solar panels were financed through a PACE loan. A PACE loan is a government-backed loan in which they pretty much, you don't have to pay anything for them, but they put a lien on the property for X amount of dollars. If you're a current homeowner, they put it behind the first mortgage. If you go to sell that home, that lien is going to bump up to the first place, and because that's going to be the first place lien against the house, you will not be able to find a buyer who is using Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac and most conventional major mortgage financiers within the country. So if you're looking to buy a home and it has a PACE loan, call your lender right away, because typically you will not even be able to qualify for that house because they won't lend on it. If you're a cash buyer, obviously this doesn't apply to you. But as a finance buyer, make sure you're aware of all of these scenarios, as they could heavily impact both the saleability of the house and then two, your affordability of the house. So the second topic that you really need to find out is whether or not the homeowner has taken advantage of the federal tax credit and what the status is from the homeowner on that situation. Typically, this is going to be the most important situation when you're looking at a set of panels that are financed. And so let me lay out this scenario. The solar panels were $20,000 to make math easy. A 30% tax credit for that is going to be $6,000. The homeowner on their taxes, the federal tax credit for the following tax year, can pay $6,000 less in their federal taxes, meaning that they have $6,000 extra cash laying around in that scenario. Most agreements with solar panel financing is that $6,000 would be paid to them in order to keep the first original low payment. If the homeowner elects to keep that, then the payment goes up. So here's where it gets a little tricky. If you're looking to assign a loan over to a new buyer, you've taken advantage of this and it's prior to the loan payment going up, you need to know that you cannot assign that financed federal tax credit portion of the solar panels. So if you had the loan for $20,000, the tax credit was $6,000, that means there's $14,000 in most cases that can be transferred out. If you owed the $20,000 on the solar panels, you now have to pay out of the proceeds of your house that $6,000. So most people aren't aware of this, and it is very important to make sure you know, one, what is your the financing company agreement, read the contract, and then two, disclose. Last thing you want to have happen is the week before closing, you find this out, you don't have enough equity, or you have to come out of pocket that additional $6,000, and the whole transaction falls apart, and now you can't sell. Okay, so the third main thing that you need to be looking for is going to be the age of the roof and the eligibility for homeowners insurance. So if the roof is fairly old, regardless of whether or not it has solar panels, it may be very hard to insure. Now, if you add on the solar panels, it may definitely not be able to be insured. Now, I'm not saying that solar panels can't be insured, because they definitely can, but there's going to be some very key restrictions, and it could vary between broker for insurance broker to insurance broker, even carrier to carrier. And as you may have heard here in the state of Florida, we've had a lot of insurance changes over the last couple of years. So I'm not going to say any guidelines right now, because the likelihood of it changing in the next year is probably pretty high. So make sure you contact your insurance rep right away if there are solar panels on the house. All right, so the fourth big thing that you need to be looking out for is what are the average savings that the solar panels are producing for the home. It could be that they're not saving any money at all and they're actually costing more because of any financing terms that may be involved with the home. It could be that they're saving a ton of money and it's a fantastic deal. Could be that they're breaking even. Now, if it is a fixed financing loan that you would be assuming, you can count on that payment staying the same. If it's a lease payment, the lease payment typically is going to go up by a percentage point every single year. So in both scenarios, the average cost of inflation for energy outside of solar panels could be underpaced or overpaced what the increased energy efficiency for the solar panels would be. So I know this sounds a little complicated. I could help break it down a little bit further, but just be aware of what the average savings are and ask for actual bills. As a seller, provide before and after bills. For a buyer, make sure you're asking for before and after bills, or calling into the insurance company to get a 12-month average and figure out, are these panels actually saving money? The fifth big thing that you should be looking out for is going to be the warranty status and what is the status of removal on reinstallation throughout the life of the loan or the life of the solar panels. And this is going to be where you find one of the biggest myths about solar panels is that it costs a ton of money to remove them and reinstall them when you're replacing the roof. And yes, this could be true if you're contacting the roofer directly and not even talking to the solar panel company. The roofer directly may have absolutely nothing to do with the solar panels, and for him to do it, for that company to do it, they could charge you $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 to take them off and put them back up. So one big thing that you need to read the contract, a lot of them include one free removal and reinstallation in a 25-year span. So if you've got a roof lasts 15 years, you put the solar panels on 15 years ago, you call that solar panel company, they'll come out, they'll remove it, and then they'll reinstall it after the new roof has been put on. And a lot of times that warranty is transferable between the original purchaser and the one who just assumed the loan or assumed the solar panel warranties. So make sure that all these are transferable. read the contract on that. And a lot of times these warranties are fantastic. They go for 25 years for both the solar panels themselves, the inverter, maybe even the batteries that you have. So read the paperwork, ask for the paperwork, and sellers disclose the paperwork on all of these. This is great info to make sure you're aware of. The 3 stories that I've come across in my personal business when dealing with solar panels. The first one is going to be a situation where the seller paid cash for the solar panels 2.5 years prior to go ahead and selling. And so they paid cash of $22,000 for the panels. They used them for 2.5 years at an average monthly saving of $75 total on their electric bill. That's what we had calculated. So they also utilized the $6,600 tax credit that they had gotten on those solar panels. So if you add all of this up and the additional home appraisal value that did help get the home appraised to what we were under contract for of $5,000, in that 2.5 year span, they still received an $8,150 net loss. So in that 2.5 years, they lost $8,150 having paid cash for the solar panels. So in that situation, they didn't own the home long enough in order to recoup the benefits. That's going to be the situation for a lot of people who pay cash for the solar panels. It's just the time in which they install it where they think they're never going to move, and then the time that they go to resell it isn't usually long enough in order to recoup the savings on the investment. Here's the second story, and keep in mind, this is going to be the most common situation that you may find is somebody that had a loan on the solar panels. They financed them, they didn't pay cash, and they didn't take a lease out on them. So in this situation, these homeowners paid $34,000, or they borrowed $34,000 in order to put solar panels on. They put $0 down. On average, they saved $98 a month for 18 months. They owned it long enough in order to receive their federal tax credit of $10,200, and then they transferred the loan to the new buyers on the home. They were also able to get an additional $7,500 in appraisal value. That's the most I have ever seen, most I've ever heard of. I was able to talk the appraiser into giving them $7,500 worth of value. And then in this short period of time, in the 18 months, because of them being able to assign the loan over to the new buyers, they did receive a net positive investment of roughly $19,464. So they made up a lot of money in that. One caveat to this, make sure you pay attention to this, is that we missed out on a ton of buyers at a higher purchase price because they were afraid to purchase the solar panels. They were afraid or they couldn't afford to be assigned the solar panel loan. So in this situation, I truly believe we could have sold the home for $25,000 more. We had a lot of interest at $25,000 more, but the solar panels were a big fear that consumers could not get over, and we ended up having to sell a home for $25,000 less. So not as big of a loss in that potential scenario. I mean, cash on cash, they did receive a great return in that short period of time, but they missed out on a higher purchase price. The third story, and this is going to be another category for what I've experienced in my personal business. The third story is that a homeowner in an age-restricted community, it was an active adult 55 plus community, they took out a lease on these solar panels. The lease was for, I want to say it was like 25 years. And anyways, every single year, the payment on these solar panels went up 2.9%. Now, the situation here that we dealt with was whenever somebody called into the electric company to figure out what their average bills were and the average savings were, and they compared the cost of the lease and then the potential increase every year on the lease, the situation was that the owner was actually paying a little bit more for this lease. The owner hadn't owned the panels or hadn't leased the panels for 5 years at this point in time, so he could not even pay the panels off in order to help incentivize a buyer. The buyer feedback that we got was, well, no, we've got another option that we could choose. It doesn't have solar panels. We're not locked into a lease. And we don't want to be stuck with that burden. I mean, some of them even had feedback of, why would I do that? I'm not even going to live for another 25 years, which, I know is a little harsh, but in that particular demographic for who was looking to buy in that neighborhood, that was a real concern, was why would we do this if we expect not to live that long? And so in this situation, we did everything we possibly could. The owner wasn't willing to drop the price significantly low enough in order to make it super incentivizing, and we just could not secure a buyer. I was not able to sell that house personally. Couldn't find a buyer who was willing to take it on. I know that house is still listed right now. It's been listed for quite some time, and the buyers are just very, very hesitant in that particular situation. So, and that one, the homeowner really was burdened by the fact that he had taken a lease out on the solar panels. If you found this video very helpful, please subscribe to my channel. I would love to keep in contact with you and help provide more value like this video. I know this one was a longer one, but it is a huge topic that is very prevalent, especially in Central Florida as the Sunshine State. Solar panels are very, very popular here, and you're even seeing more and more communities being built where they have to have solar panels. Pretty unique situation, and it is a topic that we are definitely going to want to make sure we know everything we possibly can on in the future. I've dealt with several solar panel transfers, several sales of homes with solar panels. So if you have a home with solar panels you're looking to sell, or you're looking to buy with a home with solar panels, please give me a call anytime here at 386-259-0744, or even just email. All my contact info is below in the description, and I would love to help you out. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great time.